Hi guys, and welcome to another episode of the Real Football Talk. I'm your host Hassan, and I have David, Adil, and Michael with us today. And we'll be discussing Derby versus Luton Town. For those of you watching, please do not forget to subscribe to our channel. We'll be deep diving into the game and analyzing what's happened in the game and the key points that's come out of it. David, what was your take on the first half and the goal we conceded?
The goal was the product of a series of crosses from the Derby right wing, which we didn't deal with at all. Pearson badly out of position. I was wondering whether the absence of a conventional left back was our undoing at that point. But otherwise, in the first half, we had the chances to have equalised and perhaps to have done better, and I think we were, definitely the better side in that first half.
David, this is something we spoke about before in the Swansea game, in terms of Pearson misreading the headers. Is this a problem that constantly coming up? It seems
he's not good enough, Pearson, and he wouldn't be playing if Lockyer wasn't injured, if Bradley wasn't injured. He's there on sufferance, and he's not very tall. That's the other, for a centre-back, he's not very tall. He's not very mobile, and he's not very tall. It isn't a good combination. And I don't think you'd be picking him if you had anyone better. And I think it cost us dearly today. That was a bad error.
Michael, what was your take on the goal?
We've conceded a number of goals like that early on in games, and then struggled to recover the position. It was. As you say, the way we were set up with three at the back, I think that encouraged them to play wide and ping the ball in. And as I say, the goal was the first of a number of occasions when we struggled a bit. So that was disappointing. But I think, looking at the first half, because the second half really turned out to be pretty dire, to be perfectly honest, as a spectacle. But in both halves, we weren't overwhelmed. We weren't outplayed by Derby County, and that's, for me, has been the most positive characteristic of our season thus far. Is that last season we were struggling. When we won, it was always by the skin of our teeth, and we were very successful at the tail end of the season after lockdown, but we were struggling. And this season, whilst we have lost more games than I would have liked, we've never been overwhelmed completely by any team, I don't think. There's been one or two where perhaps we've played poorly, but we've always competed. And I thought today we competed, and with a bit of luck, we could have gone in 1-1. We had a penalty shout, which I think, we could have, handball decision in the Derby penalty area. I think if we'd got that, we'd have gone in 1-1. And I think a little bit like the Sheffield Wednesday game, when teams are at the bottom end of the league and they start conceding goals, the reason why they're at the bottom end of the table is because they're not winning games. And I think that they could have, if that penalty decision had gone our way and we converted it into a goal, we'd gone in 1-1, or if Elijah had managed to put one of his 3 or 4 chances away, I think we could have run out of a very easy game, But
counter that,
it's like
to counter David, the things that concerns me is that of the 7 goals, of the 7 away wins we've had this season, all of them have been 1-0. I think we've only got 9 goals away from home. There's an element of good fortune there to score so few goals and to get so many wins. And I would be worried about next season if we can't create more in away matches, because I think that we might next season only be winning 2 or 3, and that would put us right in the mix to go down. So it has to change.
Well, I think the strength of the side is, I think what Nathan has done is made sure that defensively we're very strong. Although our goal difference isn't great, but when we have played away and we've won all of those games 1-0, defensively we've always looked reasonably tight. And I think so long as we can strengthen our defence and ensure that we've got a defensive format that works well and minimises chances, I think we'll be okay. because again, looking for the positives in today's performance, I thought Naismith, who on his first outing, I wasn't quite sure why we'd acquired him, what position he's actually going to play. He's now playing solidly in the back. And, David and I were discussing at the end of our session at the end of the game that Naismith was head and shoulders the best player for us in the team. He was solid. He really didn't put a foot wrong. Very difficult to get around. Great timing with his tackles. His distribution is pretty much okay. Not perfect, but pretty much okay. So that was for me one of the positives out of it. And
definitely.
So that's
so
I think looking forward to.
Sorry, Michael. I was just gonna say, let's look at what were the mistakes made within the goal that we conceded, because obviously this was a key factor and kind of changed the game.
I was just going to add that even though it's a big improvement from last year, that Luton look like a comfortable championship team this season, in terms of like Mike alluded to, that every game we've competed, we've been hardworking, we've not really been outplayed. But as a manager, I'd be frustrated at this end of the season. You'd be frustrated if you're losing games that you're still playing well in, and you're probably. I thought Luton Town were the more fluid team today. In when they played passing, when they tried to attack, they looked more fluid in their approach than Derby County. But because it's been a theme in quite a few of the games, for me, I'd start getting frustrated that Luton Town just don't seem to go for it enough. I always feel like they're playing precise football, and they're playing very precautionary. And when you're losing, it's like you want them to kind of go for it a bit sooner than the last 10 minutes, where they started to pump the ball in. But it just feels like we don't actually, because we're comfortable. It just feels like, why don't we go for it a bit more? Because
it brings us back almost to what we were talking about in the England games, where once again they didn't go for it. Both England and Luton haven't gone for it in games where they could have done. And that's quite intriguing.
And I thought part of the reason, I'm trying to make reasons for the first goal. I thought one of the reasons that might have affected Luton Town is the constant change in shape, because when they played more of a 4 at the back today, and for the first goal, Bree was high up the pitch like he's playing the wing back role, and he should be more tucked in. But the only reason I could think he was so out of position was maybe because he just hasn't adapted to the 4 at the back, because he plays in a wing back role more often than not. So and then obviously Pearson, because most of the time Martin Wacken was coming to link up the play, I think Pearson was expecting the ball to feed. So he's looking to go forward, and then suddenly gets caught out with the ball in behind. So obviously, like you alluded to, David, Pearson's judgment of what's happening in front of him is a problem, because I felt that area of the whole pitch was the only area where Derby kind of comfortably got the ball, which was in those 10 positions outside of the centre backs, because Sibley and Tom Lawrence, in fairness, the whole game kept picking up the ball in those areas. And I think the formation might have surprised Nathan Jones, because Ria couldn't pick up both players. He had two 10s either side of him, and he couldn't pick up both of them. A lot of the times he was focusing on Sibley, and you could see Lawrence was free down the other side, so he kept picking it up a lot of the times. So I think the formation definitely, Rooney's nearly every game has changed formation. It's one of the criticisms he's been getting recently from Derby fans, is he changes formation literally every single match. And he's played 4-2-3-1, 4-3-3, wing back system. Today he went similar system to Chelsea. Where he's wing back, but he's got 2 10s and 1 striker. So I think Nathan Jones wasn't prepared for the system that Rooney.
And that's unusual for Nathan because he's actually tactically astute.
He is, but from I don't get to see as many Luton games as you, but when I have seen him, I always feel he takes very long to make adjustments in game.
Yeah. Yes.
Even today, I mean, it was clear that they had 2 10s and 1 striker, and the only width was coming from the wing
it's
back.
almost like but it's almost like he has to wait for something to go wrong before he makes an adjustment. And like today, you know, we were a goal behind, and I mean, once the adjustments were made, really that threat seemed to be snuffed out, so it didn't feature throughout the game. And the same, the second half, I mean, they had a penalty, and without that, Sluga had almost nothing to do. Now it may be that they felt they were just cruising and didn't need to make much of an effort, but I think from our performance, I think the problem is the quality of the final ball, and this has been characteristic throughout the season. Has never been quite good enough, and that's the frustration. Some of the approach play has been really good.
Perhaps the product, Mike, of the fact that we just don't have the money to get the midfield who are capable. And obviously, Dewsbury Hall can do it, but the rest of them are not really particularly good at delivering the final ball. Pelly very often will make a dreadful pass. He'll make a brilliant, dreadful pass, but won't get any consistency from him. You know, the other midfielders are a bit prone to doing the same thing.
I mean, Dewsbury Hall, I mean, he does seem to have gone a bit off the boil, to be honest. You know, some of his distribution is just too far ahead. It's
he
too
has
inventive for the rest of the players to be in tune with what he's thinking. And again, that may have something to do with the quality of the players around him. But I think some of his distribution hasn't been as good as when he was winning man of the match every single week in, week out.
Michael, sorry, on that point, do you think that's because we're so defensively minded and so deep that obviously players are not getting quick enough up for him to provide the option?
Yeah, I mean, possibly. I mean, I think there is an issue about pace in the team.
Yeah.
I mean, Clark is quick. Obviously, Cornick is quick. Elijah's quick. But you know, when Collins is playing, I mean, he's very hard working and very industrious, but he's not quick. And I think that is an issue. But it is frustrating that some of the intricate stuff just doesn't quite come off. And you know, I watched the England game against Poland, and the passing was just extraordinarily accurate. That I know there's a bit of a frustrating game that England dominated the whole of the first half and only went in on 1 goal up, and then the Polish team made a few alterations which seemed to put them into the ascendancy. But the pass and move was just extra, and we're just a million miles away from that, I think, and that's the frustration. And I think Dewsbury Hall, he tries to make those sort of passes, and for a variety of reasons. Sometimes it's his own accuracy or inaccuracy, and sometimes it's the players around him. There, because the thing about playing at this level is that first touch, because in the Premier League, the first touch is just extraordinary, but some of our first touch is really suspect, and that breaks down, and you know, the ball's booted away and there's another opportunity.
I feel with Luton, they do a lot of the intricate stuff in their own half, though.
Yeah.
They don't do enough of it actually where it counts. Like the creative play, I'd rather see it on the edge of the opposition box. But the brand of football, the way we play, is we do all this intricate stuff in our own half, and we release one player down the side, and that one player will cross for one play in the box only. And it's very precise football. It's really hard. And I'm not surprised why we haven't won that many games away from home, because that brand of football is so precise. It's so the numbers are just not in our favor, because we don't push up as a team and then do the intricate stuff on the edge of the box where we have loads of different options. We always only have one option. And you have to credit the football. I mean, we're still causing teams problems with that. So I would still say there's a lot to be said about the way we attack, the fact that we're still testing opposition keepers or creating chances, because it's very precise. It's only with one person attacking and one run that we're creating these chances. We're not really overcommitting to the attack. And again, I thought the same thing today. I mean, Adebayo is so difficult to mark him because he's such an intelligent player off the ball. His movement is excellent.
He is great.
Clark really struggled to control him and to kind of keep him under control.
Do you take my point about him being too cerebral, though, on occasions, that he's too, there is a slight tendency to overthink and to be too generous in the way he will pass it to a player rather than just blasting it at the goal or whatever?
Well,
I mean, do you think
definitely confidence is an issue, even in the chance he had. I mean, really good chance. But he just, it's like he was just focused on making connection with the ball instead of actually striking it.
Yeah.
And a confident striker will go through the ball and want to hit it. And even other shots, when he cuts in, he always feels like he's just interested in connecting and getting the shot on target instead of actually whipping that ball and taking a real shot and a real strike at it. He doesn't go through the ball. So it seems like he's trying to play safe and just connect every time instead of even with the headers, they're always just placement. They're not really he's really putting power or direction into it. He's just getting, it's like the focus is just get my head on it. So there is a lack of confidence in the finishing. And I think he will make a huge difference if he can take that next step of getting that killer instinct and that confidence in his finishing, because he's definitely hard to control.
I think the other aspect of him in the team is we haven't had a player like him that was regularly winning the ball in the air for a long, long time. And some of his link-up play and distribution, I just don't think some of the other players are used to it, and they even though they train all week together, I don't think they've quite got it in tune with where he's going to distribute the ball to, because some of his layoffs and the control that he's got when he's under quite a lot of pressure is actually excellent.
It is,
and I just the players are not. It seems to me some of his colleagues aren't in tune with the capacity and the ability he's got to win the ball, hold the ball, and distribute it. Whether it's and because he's good on the ground as well as good in the air, and he's so strong. I mean, he rarely gets knocked off the ball, and he's not like one of these players that's looking for free kicks all the time, and he does very, very rarely does he foul anybody. I mean, so he's got so many positive attributes to his...
You know what's really interesting about what Adil said, and that worries me, Adil, that you say he isn't confident, because actually he's got no reason at all not to be confident. He scored 3 in 6. He came from Walsall, where he was getting a pretty decent strike rate. There are players who are permanently not very confident. And if he's one of those players, because he should be on a relative high, he's stepped up a division, he scored 3 goals speedily. If he is innately not very confident, innately cautious, all of the good things Mike's talking about might be undermined by that.
But David, do you think that's down to that jump up? Maybe he's still apprehensive. He still maybe doesn't believe that he belongs at this level.
Yeah, possibly.
That could be the issue.
Yeah, but all he has to do is look at his performance week in and he belongs there. I mean, he is without doubt one of our best acquisitions in a long, long time. I mean, we discussed in the run up to him being selected that we probably wouldn't see him at all season because it's such a big jump up and there'd be too much pressure on him. But he's just stepped up to the mark and he's slotted in.
I don't think he has confidence in his ability. I think just in front of goal, there seems to be a lack of... I think he knows he's good enough, he's good, because he's causing problems. I mean, because it's so hard to play one up top. And he's wrestling against 3 today, and they couldn't handle him. They just couldn't handle it. They couldn't read they couldn't read when he was linking, when he's got running in behind, when he's going up for headers. I would be worried, because if he learns how to finish, he could become a very good striker in the championship. He'd be a striker that the bigger clubs will definitely look at.
Yeah,
because
I think he will be in due course. It's hard to see that he won't, because any championship player, he's got goals so early in his championship career. I'm sure he will be getting more as he gets more attuned to the way that championship sides play. He will get better and better. He's got as Mike said, he's got a great work rate. He's skillful. He's speedy. He's going to be a hell of a player. I'm pretty sure, and I think he's the sort of player who could well be of interest to Premiership clubs, if only as a sort of desperate end of season buy, which sometimes
he's still young and developing. That's the main thing. So my point around his striking is maybe he hasn't got the confidence in his striking yet. Even though he gets goals, the goals he's got are very much right in front of the box, really close to the 6 yard. They're more instinct goals. They're not goals where he's had time on the ball and has to finish. A lot of them are just the balls come in, taking a couple of, and it's just instinct his shot and he's scored.
Yeah. I mean, as I say, that's hopefully that will come.
Definitely, I agree. He'll come.
Will you talk more about the Derby tactical system? Because I'm always interested when you talk about the tactics, and you've said that. I think you mentioned they changed it umpteen times even in the course of this game. So I'd be intrigued to know what your take on the two tactical systems was.
But I think the first half they played with 2 10s, and that was probably the most the biggest thing in the game, really, because the goals both came from obviously one of the balls came from a ball in from that side from Sibley into Waghorn, and so we were outnumbered in the defensive mid position, because we got Ria, but he can't mark out both number 10s. So we needed Tunnicliffe to come in a bit more. They did it better after the goal, but for that first goal and definitely for the second goal, we got caught out. For the penalty, we got caught out. The only difference was the second half, I felt Tom Lawrence was trying to run in behind a bit more, the gap left by Bree. But in the first half, it was very much staying in front of the Pearson. And so effectively, you've got 3v3 every single time, because you got Sibley, you got Lawrence, and then you got Martin Waghorn against our 2 centre-backs and Ria. So I just felt we needed that extra protection. I think the whole diamond system is normally Ria is protecting the centre-backs, but today he had to pick up someone every single time. So I thought tactically Rooney was quite smart in his formation, because he's now taken away Luton's protection, because Ria had to, and a lot of the times he was getting sucked in by Sibley. That meant Tom Lawrence was free. We needed one of the other midfielders to tuck in, or Bria to tuck in a lot more, but he wasn't. He's playing quite wide. So there's always a gap between Pearson and Brie. And the second goal is an excellent example of that. I mean, Ria ended up following Tom Lawrence's run into the box. But again, you have to question, why is Bria going out wide to the wing back? He shouldn't be going out to the wing back, because that's why we've got the extra man in midfield. You want Tunnicliffe or Cornick, or someone has to pick up the wing back, and you want Bree to stay narrow and protect.
Shouldn't this be something sorted by Jones during halftime? Clearly seeing that throughout the whole half being played out.
I think they did, because I think they asked Tunnicliffe to come in a bit more. And that's why, the penalty was disappointing, because there was 3 players around Lawrence at the time. So there was actually no need for any panic or tackling. But once he cut into his right, he actually was going into traffic.
So, I think that Ray deliberately pulled him down. He just caught him as he turned on him. And
but it was just the panic nature of going for a block there when you don't need to go for a block. You got 2 other guys there for the block.
Yeah.
Because he's going onto that side. I just felt it's just all a bit panicked from Ria. But the adjustment was that instead of picking up the ball in the playmaking number 10 position, Lawrence was running in behind this time. And that's the confusion and the adjustment. So I do think Jones did make an adjustment, but Derby, they literally just played for those 2 goals, and then after that were very counter-attack, very the whole second half was littered with fouls. I didn't enjoy the second half because any momentum Luton tried building, Derby kept fouling.
Yeah, there wasn't a lot of time wasting, but as you say, there was no endeavour from Derby to make a game of it.
Did you think that when he wrestled Dewsbury Hall to the floor, could have gone off for that? I mean, it's a really quite serious foul, because what he's doing is taking a player out completely and making sure he can't take part at all for a quite lengthy period of time. I thought he was lucky to get just a booking.
And then to fake injury as if he'd been smashed in the face. I just thought that was absolutely the worst aspect of the modern game.
That's the thing I would say, Michael and David, both of you, that's what they were doing in terms of being intelligent and using their experience to kind of buy those or make those fouls to kind of break up play and actually break up Luton's momentum that they were building. So that's intelligence, and they're not really going to get red carded for just breaking up play. I don't think that's what happened.
Yeah, it's one of the worst aspects of the game. I think absolutely. We're all sick of it.
I mean, every ex-player will say, "Oh, he took one for the team. Excellent play, professional,
definitely,
professional foul. Had to do that." I mean, it's one of those ones. On the touchline, unfortunately, anyone involved in the game will praise the player who does that, who just deliberately fouls and stops a counter attack.
No, I think the great thing about football, the interesting thing about football in many ways, is that tactically it's incredibly sophisticated. And what football managers do is they push the rules as far as they possibly can. In other sports that aren't as possessed of money and which aren't therefore, I think, as professional, there's still sportsmanship. But in a game where everything turns on victory and the amounts of money involved are huge, players can't afford to be good sports. But it struck me that was a particularly egregious example of the principle in operation, and perhaps it was one that was worth more than the yellow card.
David, I agree with you.
That professional foul.
Yeah, but if you flip that on the other side, if a Luton player wants to do that to break up,
I like it.
We would love it.
Yeah.
So it's
I agree. But it's for the rules to be altered. The way in which you deal with the professional foul is to make an amendment to the rules. I don't know quite how you do it. The various attempts they've done over the years, tackles from behind and so on. They haven't really worked in most cases. But they do need to do something about that, because it is, and the time wasting. Not that there wasn't, in fairness to Derby, there wasn't that much time wasting.
No, in fairness to them, they didn't. They kept playing, which was to their credit. I mean, I suppose part of the problem is your point, David, that it's all about winning. And, from a managerial point of view, who's basically telling the players what to do, I mean, he's got one eye on the sack. I mean, have no two ways about it. The turnover of managerial appointments and sackings during the course of any season is horrendous. And the shelf life that managers have got is incredibly short. So you can understand why they go about it in the way they do, but it is unfortunately a feature of the game which I think does not serve the game well. And I mean, David and I had a brief conversation about the way in which rugby is managed, and particularly how the referee has got apart from the fact everything the referee does in all the big games is played out through the tannoy system, and you actually hear the conversation that he's having, and the conversation is only with the skippers of the two sides, and it isn't a conversation; it is a one-way explanation of what the referee has decided, and it is pretty obvious he's not remotely interested in any of the players having a word to say about it, and it's all done very respectfully. And in some ways, if football applied the same principle, I'm sure what the referee has to put up with, people would find quite shocking.
I mean, I was thinking of rugby when I spoke of the professional aspect of the game, because I think rugby has a great deal less money in it. There is more sportsmanship in it, it isn't played to the same level in truth. And rugby fans will say it is, but it isn't. It isn't played to the same pitch of angst that football is played to because the money is so huge.
But I think part of it is also rugby is a lot more of a team sport in terms of off the ball, on the ball, just to attack. There's less individualism involved. So what that does is that also helps, because in football, even in grassroots level, it's ridiculous. A player will do the foul and he'll just pop off and swear at the referee no matter what, even if the referee's got the decision right. It's just the culture, is because there's so much individualism involved in football that every player carries an ego with them. And so even when they're in the wrong and the referee's called a decision right, it's just natural just to say, oh, F off, ref, and just start on the ref, oh, you don't know what you're doing. It's just a culture, totally different culture, where it's just accepted that you can have...
Would my suggestion, do you think, have any bearing? If only the captain is allowed to communicate and it's a booking offence or worse for anyone to show dissent, any form of dissent, do you think that would make a difference? I don't know if it would, Mike,
well,
because
they are clamping down on it now in grassroots football. Any dissent to the referee is straight away a 10-minute sin bin. So they are bringing elements of rugby rules in to now tackle the problem at grassroots level. But obviously the problem is it's not transferred onto the professional game at the moment. And if the same rule was applied on the professional game, it'll probably have a bigger impact, because everyone would then start taking notice of respecting referees more. But at the moment, it's only on grassroots football, this 10-minute sin bin. And if you do it 3 times, then you're sent off. So you can do it twice, and then the 3rd time you actually sent off.
Well, if you like the episode with the tussle on the floor, where virtually all 11 players got involved on both sides, the referee probably would have ended up sin binning everybody, and that would have been the end of the game, you know.
But you can also look at it in another point, that it is part of the game, and it does. I mean, you can influence the decisions and everything in rugby and change the momentum of the game.
Yes. And that's one of the fascinations of football, that the tactical aspect is so sophisticated, it seems to me. And I don't think it is when I watch rugby. I think it's a much simpler approach. You've got 2 lines of men in rugby, and in football, you've dotting players around the pitch, and their position at any given moment can vary wildly according to a manager's instructions even. Whereas a rugby player, he has to be in part of that line. There's no freedom to leave it because the ball is going sideways across the pitch so that the final one can make the run for the try. I think it's much harder to have a coherent tactical system in football, especially when what you're facing can be so fluid as well.
Definitely.
Yeah, but I think the thing is that in rugby, it is an incredibly physical game. You know, where the contact element of the sport is absolutely embedded into the way in which it's played. And yet, even though it is very physical, players do not lose their cool. I mean, you see some of the tackles in rugby compared with the tackles in football, and there are no comparisons. And yet, the players make a huge meal out of rolling around on the ground like they've been.
You know what I think happens in rugby? You've got players bashing into each other, and that's like a sort of compression injury. When a footballer gets taken in the ankle or in the shin, it's incredibly painful. You know, nothing hurts more than getting your ankle kicked or your shin kicked. In rugby, that doesn't happen that much. They're not connecting legs at low level. They're connecting bodies at high level. And it will wind you, and it will be very exhausting to be flattened like that. But you don't get the same pain that you get when a leg scythes into your shin, and that's why footballers.
I think a big thing with these more physical sports is when a rugby player is going for a run and he knows he's going into a physical contact, so he knows there's going to be someone tackling him. And so if both sides of the team know what's going to happen to that player. But in football, it's not known. If a player goes on a run, he's not expecting to get taken out or hacked.
Yes.
Expecting his skills to be too good. So I think that changes the dynamic slightly. And because of that, there's less respect between players, because it's like in boxing. At the end of it, you're going to respect the opposition because you know they've put their life on the line as well. They've accepted a physical battle. And it's like that in rugby. I think the mannerisms are different because everyone ends up respecting each other because they know once they've crossed that field, they've accepted the challenge of crashing into each other in brute force. And football isn't like that. Football is, only certain players are going to go in and take you out and foul you. And that's where it's a different code, really. There's less respect for players because of that.
Thank you.
I think that's really...
Sorry, David. I was going to kind of bring it back to Luton and what happened to the game. Because kind of get a bit too carried away with it. Michael, what do you think with regards to Luton? How much more can they progress? Can they finish top half of the table, do you reckon?
Well, we have in our group, we have a little competition as to where we think we're going to finish up in at the end of the season. I won't say where David reckons we're going to finish, but I'm still angling for the final playoff position. By us winning every one of our remaining games. I'll let David say where he thinks we're going to finish it. It's in our little. I've been a supporter since 1964. I've seen it all. I think you've got to be optimistic. But so I expect us to win every game, and
I expect to lose every game because I refuse to tempt fate. So we're in our little prediction league before each match. I always predict defeat because I don't want to tempt fate. But they have the potential as a side to finish in the top half. I mean, they're more or less on the edge of it as it is, and they do have the potential. My gut feeling is they'll finish nearer the bottom than the top, because I think in these last few games you'll experiment a bit, and they'll probably, their will to win will be diminished by virtue of the fact that they're safe. But I think they've got the skill there.
I think they're going to come up against teams that are willing to take more risks because they've got more on the line. So so those teams that are pushing for playoffs will take more risks, and those teams that are in a relegation fight will take more risks than they normally would do. So I have a feeling that might count against Luton because of the style they play.
Well, it'll be interesting.
They don't take risks.
We've got two games coming up. Barnsley, who are running away with a great run, and we've got Wickham, who are trying to do the Great Escape. They're our next two games, and I think we'll have examples of both ends of the table and how we fare up against them. I assume we should win handsomely in both games. No problem.
Seems like some fascinating games coming up for Luton and good games to look forward to. So thank you all for coming on the show and contributing and giving
the game. All the best. Great to see you.
See you guys soon. So thank you guys.
Cheers, man.
Thanks.